The stethoscope still smells like the clinic. You're 34 years old, 11 years of training, a veterinary license in 3 states, a specialty in emergency soft tissue repair, and $210,000 in student debt that compounds faster than your salary ever will. You drive a 2009 Civic. You rent. You have not taken a vacation since your licensing exams. Your colleagues talk about opening their own practices someday. You nod. You've run those numbers. The numbers don't work. The clinic is a 24-hour emergency animal hospital in a mid-sized city where nobody has money and everybody loves their dog. You are good at this. Genuinely good. Your hands are steady under pressure. Your pattern recognition in trauma is exceptional. Your attending supervisor told you that once, directly, which almost never happens. You filed it away. You kept working. The call comes on a Tuesday. Not a dramatic call, not the one you imagined later after everything changed. A referral through someone who knew someone who had watched you work a difficult case on a German Shepherd that shouldn't have lived. The message is simple. A man needs a doctor. He cannot go to a hospital. The compensation is $18,000 cash for one procedure. You hang up. You go back to work. You run the numbers in your head for 6 hours while suturing a Labrador with a perforated bowel. $18,000. That is 4 months of salary. That is a payment and a half on debt that has not moved in 3 years. That is the number that does not leave you. You call back. This is the first rule of shadow medicine. The entry point is always financial, and it is always designed to be irresistible at the exact moment you are most exhausted. The patient is a man in his 40s with a through-and-through gunshot wound to the upper thigh that has missed the femoral artery by what you will later estimate was 11 millimeters. You work in a finished basement in a house that smells like bleach and cigarettes. The equipment is surprisingly competent. A real surgical table, proper lighting, lidocaine, ketamine, antibiotics, saline, suture material, and sealed packaging. Someone has done this before. Someone has sourced all of this carefully, slowly, through channels that do not draw attention. Veterinary supply accounts, agricultural antibiotic distributors, dental procurement networks. The anesthesia sourced through a licensed medical wholesaler with a shell company intermediary that would take federal investigators 2 years to unwind. You don't know any of that yet. You just see the supplies. You check the dates. You work. The procedure takes 94 minutes. You have done more complex work on a Great Dane with internal bleeding. Your hands do not shake. That surprises you. You clean up. You give wound care instructions to a man who writes nothing down and forgets nothing. You are handed an envelope. You drive home. You sit in your car for 40 minutes before going inside. This is the moment everyone remembers differently afterward. Some say they felt sick. Some say they felt nothing. What you feel is a very specific, very quiet clarity. The kind that only comes when a problem you have been unable to solve for years has just been solved by a single evening's work. You do not call again. You tell yourself that. 3 weeks later, they call you. The second rule. In shadow medicine, you do not find the work. The work finds you. And it finds you on a schedule you do not control. The second case is more complex. Abdominal trauma. Internal bleeding, 2 hours of work that pushes everything you know to its edge. The compensation is $31,000. You source nothing yourself. Everything is waiting when you arrive. Someone is managing a supply chain on your behalf, which means someone has already decided you are worth the infrastructure investment. You do not understand what that means yet. You will. By the 6th procedure, you have paid off $60,000 in debt. You have also begun to understand the logistics of what you are participating in. The sterile supplies rotate sources every 60 to 90 days to avoid procurement pattern flags. Ketamine moves through a veterinary supply distributor with altered manifests. The antibiotics are pharmaceutical grade, sourced through a medical tourism intermediary registered in 3 countries. Nothing connects. Everything connects. Someone above your line of sight has built a system, and you are the most valuable component in it. The money changes your life in the specific, quiet ways that matter most. You stop checking your bank account with your eyes half closed. You sleep through nights you used to lie awake calculating. You pay down debt in chunks that would have taken you years. You buy nothing visible, nothing that would require an explanation. You tell yourself this is temporary. That is the 3rd rule, though no one tells it to you. Everyone in shadow medicine tells themselves it is temporary. The temporariness is part of the architecture. It keeps you cooperative. It keeps you coming back because stopping always feels like a decision you can make next time. Around month 8, the structure of the arrangement becomes clear. You are not a contractor. You were never a contractor. You are an asset. The difference is operational. A contractor can decline work. An asset is managed. Your schedule is no longer entirely yours. Calls come with shorter lead times. The cases get more complex, which means more critical, which means the patients cannot survive without someone with your specific capability. That is not an accident. You are selected for cases where the dependency is highest. Each case is a thread that ties you more securely into the structure. You try to decline once. The response is not threatening. It's something worse. Patient. Explanatory. The man on the phone walks you through, in calm and reasonable language, what your exposure looks like from the outside. The procedures. The sourcing patterns. The envelope records he has kept. Not to threaten you, he says, but because responsible people document things. You listen. You understand. You show up to the next case. You are now 35 years old. You have $90,000 left in debt. Your hands are steadier than they have ever been. And somewhere above you, in a structure you can see the outline of but not the top of, someone has already decided that you are far too valuable to ever let go. That is not a job offer. That is a diagnosis.
The supply chain is elegant if you are capable of admiring it from the inside. You are, by now, capable of admiring it from the inside. Year 2. You have moved. Not far, not conspicuously. A slightly better apartment in the same city. The kind of upgrade that reads as a raise, not a transformation. Your debt is gone. You did not celebrate. Celebration requires someone to celebrate with, and your circle has quietly restructured itself around the single constraint that now governs your life. Nobody can know what you do. That is its own economics. The cost of discretion is social. You become fluent in half-truths, consulting work, private medical advising, something in animal health logistics. People stop asking because your answers are always slightly boring and slightly plausible, which is the precise calibration required. You are not hiding. You are just consistently unremarkable. That is the skill nobody teaches in 11 years of medical training, and yet it is the one that keeps you breathing. The 4th rule. Your value in shadow medicine is a composite. Your clinical skill is the foundation, but your discretion is the structure built on top of it. One without the other is useless. Both together are, to the people who employ you, almost impossible to replace. This is where the economics become genuinely interesting, if you can hold the terror at arm's length long enough to look. A licensed trauma surgeon in a major hospital system earns, with bonuses, somewhere between $400,000 and $650,000 annually. They work inside a system of oversight, liability, peer review, and institutional constraint. Their skill is valuable. Their skill is also replicable. There are pipelines producing more of them every year. You earn, in your 2nd year, approximately $340,000 in cash. You work fewer hours than a hospital surgeon. You operate in a market with no competition because the barrier to entry is not a medical degree.
Any number of physicians could theoretically do what you do. What they cannot replicate is the combination of capability, established trust within the network, and the existing proof that you will not break. That proof took 8 procedures in 14 months to build. It cannot be transferred. It cannot be purchased from someone else. You are, in the coldest possible analytical terms, a natural monopoly. The organization understands this better than you do. This is the 4th rule manifesting. The organization has already done the calculation that you are only now beginning to run. Your replacement cost is not another doctor. Your replacement cost is 18 months of vetting, the construction of new supply logistics, the operational risk of introducing an unknown variable into a system that runs on certainty. Your replacement cost is, for practical purposes, prohibitive. That is why the conversation about exclusivity happens in year 2, not as a threat, as a business proposal, delivered by a man in a very good suit in a restaurant with no tables close enough to matter. He is calm. He is specific. He explains that the organization has decided to formalize the arrangement. Monthly retainer, guaranteed, whether you work or not. Access to upgraded equipment. A second location, better equipped for complex cases. In exchange, you do not work for anyone else. You do not refer cases elsewhere. You do not discuss the nature of your work with anyone in your personal life, medical life, or civic life, ever, for any reason. You ask what happens if you decline. He does not answer that question. He refills your water glass. He lets the silence do the work. You understand. The silence is the answer. You sign nothing. There is never a document. The agreement exists in the way all agreements at this level exist, in the understood structure of consequences, in the knowledge that both parties have too much embedded in the arrangement to walk away from it cleanly. You have the exposure, they have the infrastructure, the leverage, and a very calm man who refills water glasses and waits. This is the 5th rule. In shadow medicine, the contract is never written, because writing it would underestimate it. The real contract is the situation itself, every procedure you have performed, every supply chain you have benefited from, every payment you have received and spent. The contract is everything that has already happened. You signed it 8 months ago in a finished basement that smelled like bleach. You just did not know it then. Year 4. You are now performing 8 to 12 procedures annually. Most are gunshot wounds, various caliber and entry angle, a pattern you have become fluent in the way radiologists become fluent in CT abnormalities. Some are stab wounds. One was a partial degloving injury from an industrial press that you will not think about unless you are tired. You have lost 2 patients. Both were unsurvivable before you arrived. You tell yourself that because it is true. The equipment has improved substantially. The second location is a converted industrial unit with a room that would pass a mid-level inspection, proper autoclave, anesthesia delivery system, monitored recovery space. Someone spent real money. That money is a message. You are a long-term infrastructure investment. Organizations do not build real operating theaters for contractors. They build them for assets they intend to keep. You begin to understand the full geometry of what you are part of, not just your individual cases, but the system surrounding them. Wounded individuals who cannot access hospitals represent a persistent operational liability for criminal organizations. Gunshot wound reporting is mandatory in every jurisdiction you have ever worked in. A single hospital visit creates a police record, an investigation, potential witness testimony. The cost of that exposure is enormous. You eliminate that cost entirely. You are not a doctor in their structure. You are a risk management function, a cost center that prevents a catastrophically more expensive outcome. The $31,000 per procedure is not a luxury payment. It is the cheapest possible solution to an existential operational problem. You could charge more. Nobody has ever told you that. You ran the numbers yourself in year 3 and arrived at the conclusion alone. You do not charge more. The retainer is generous enough, and you understand with a clarity that settled over you somewhere in year 3 like weather, that renegotiating from the inside of a golden cage requires a very specific kind of courage that you have not yet located in yourself. Year 6. You are 40 years old. Your hands are the steadiest they have ever been. You know things about penetrating trauma that emergency physicians with 2 decades of hospital experience do not know, because your patient population presents patterns no IRB-approved study has ever properly captured. You are, in the most specific clinical sense, exceptional. You are also completely unreachable by the profession that trained you. Your license, technically, is still valid. You have maintained the continuing education requirements through a combination of online coursework and a compliance administrator you have never met who manages the paperwork. The license is the last thread to the world you came from. You do not know why you maintain it. You do know why. You maintain it because letting it lapse would be a decision. Maintaining it lets you believe, on the specific mornings when the weight of the arrangement presses down without warning, that you are still in a situation with a door. There is no door. You have known that since the water glass. But the license is a story you tell yourself, and at 40, inside a machine that has restructured everything, including the way you think about your own future, the stories you tell yourself are the only real estate you own outright. The 6th rule, the one nobody in shadow medicine survives long enough to articulate, the system never releases assets voluntarily. It only loses them to death, incapacitation, or the kind of catastrophic external event that takes the system down with them. You are healthy. You are careful. You are very good. Somewhere across the city, in a 24-hour emergency animal hospital, a new veterinarian is working a difficult case on a dog that shouldn't live. Her hands are unsteady. She is $220,000 in debt. She has not taken a vacation since her licensing exams. She will not receive a call for 3 more years. But the call is already being prepared for her. The machine identifies its next component early. It has always worked this way. It always will. The terminal blinks. Another case arrives, and somewhere in a converted industrial unit with a proper autoclave and monitored recovery space, you scrub in. You stopped counting procedures after year 3. You just work.